At Boise State Public Radio, we understand that not everyone is able to give financially. Did you know there are other ways you can give? We are looking for new volunteers to add to our ranks and have a variety of opportunities.
Who wants to volunteer?
If you're interested in a hands-on volunteer experience, visit our website under the Support tab to find out more at boisestatepublicradio.org.
Thank you to all the staff and volunteers who are part of Boise State Public Radio.
More Idaho Matters right now. I'm Gemma Gaudette. This month marks 60 years since the summer of 1966, a point in American history when the Vietnam War was rapidly escalating. Within just a few years, more than 500,000 American military personnel would be stationed in Vietnam, and more than 58,000 Americans would die or be listed as missing and presumed dead. And today, the echoes of those lost are still felt by countless families. A new documentary called Jimmy in Saigon is exploring the life and mysterious death of Jimmy McDowell, a 24-year-old American who served in Vietnam and then made the unexpected decision to return after his military service had ended. Boise State Public Radio reporter George Prentice sat down with the film's director, Peter McDowell, Jimmy's younger brother, to talk more about this deeply personal film. Let's take a listen.
Jimmy was your brother.
Yes. He was the oldest in the family. Born in 1948, and he was 19 years older than me. I was the youngest, born in 1967. So when he suddenly and mysteriously died in 1972, I was only 5 years old, and I didn't really know him. I didn't really know what was going on. It's actually one of my earliest memories was his death. I only have shadowy memories of him as a person. So in some ways, I feel like I never met him.
And Jimmy was complex, to say the least.
So, from my point of view, I grew up with him as a completely shadowy character because I just knew about his reputation through my brothers and sisters who all idolized him, almost like a second father in our family. My parents who were so grief-stricken that it really wasn't a topic to talk about him at all. And so if I tried to bring it up, I was often met with things like, well, let's not talk about that. That's too sad, or
Wow.
It's not something to talk about.
The beginning of the mystery is that Jimmy died as a civilian in Vietnam. He served in Vietnam, but then he went back to Vietnam and died as a civilian.
Yeah, and this is, you're touching on an important part of my coming of age in terms of his story, because I think when I was a very little kid, I thought that he died in the war, and why wouldn't I, And then my parents told me that he died of a tropical disease. So I kind of grew up with that knowledge. I gradually found out that he served his full time. He went over to Vietnam in 1970 and served his time with the military, and then came back at the very beginning of 71. He came back to the United States. And within a few months, he was writing letters to my parents saying, you're never going to believe this, but I want to go back to Vietnam. And so, of course, my parents and, of course, his friends thought that that was the craziest thing to do, to go back to Vietnam in 1971. But he did. He was able to figure out a way to do it as an independent study, to study at a university there. And he went back in 71, but then almost exactly 1 year later, he was suddenly and mysteriously dead. And my parents got a telegram that said that he had died. And that's sort of where the story begins.
So you have become an artist at the highest level, actor, musician, but for our purposes, an acclaimed film producer and director. So when was this going to be a film? Was this always going to be a film? Was it always circling your heart or your brain?
Yeah, it's interesting. My family, so my mom was a painter, a visual artist, and my father was a musician. So we grew up in this environment of the arts. I was always interested in film. I had a little Super 8 camera and I would make little films. And then when I was in grad school, I took a film class and I made a short film. And a person who was close to me at the time said, Peter, you should really make a film about your brother. This friend knew my story about my brother, and he knew how much heartache there was in our family. It was plain to see when people met my family, they would often say, "Your family seems really sad," or there seems to be some sort of unspoken things happening. And now that I've taken this film all over the world, I've taken the film to 41 film festivals and won 16 awards around the world. I'm amazed. I took the film to Italy and Greece and Holland, and people came up after the screening and said, "This is just like our culture. You know, we don't talk about things. We don't talk about death. We have family secrets. We have, we don't talk about grief and healing and mourning." So, at any rate, I just felt I had this strong quest that I wanted to find answers to the situation. And everything unfolded in a certain way. I mean, was I was the only person in my family to come out as gay. I came out as gay in 1984, which was a really difficult time to do that because it was in the middle of the
Mhm.
AIDS crisis. And it wasn't until many years later that my mom said to me, "I always wondered if maybe your brother Jimmy was gay as well." And I said, "Oh my gosh, why wouldn't you have told me that earlier?"
Wow.
And then she said, "Oh, I don't know. I don't think it's true. I don't forget I said anything, basically."
Hmm.
So a seed was planted in my head, and that wasn't it clearly wasn't the only motivation, but there was a certain part of this project that was like to me, wow, I mean, might I have had a brother who was gay, that I could have been friends with, or who could have been sort of a role model or a mentor to me. So yeah, so I dove into the project. I started in 2010 making this film. I had not made a film in 15 years. I made some short films in the 90s, and I started making this film in 2010. One of the reasons I started making it is because I felt like HD video was starting to look really good, like film. I really love film itself, and if as you might remember, video looked kind of ugly in the
Yeah.
1990s.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to make a work of art. I wanted to make something that was beautiful, and so I spent my last $2,000 buying a used HD camera and sound equipment in 2010. I was living in New York City at the time, and I embarked on a journey to try to interview everybody who ever knew my brother and to try to walk in his footsteps. And I didn't know how long that journey would take, but it took 12 years. So the film was filmed between 2010 and 2022.
And it's truly a detective story. There are moments in the film where our hearts are racing, and you do go to the other side of the world, not just Vietnam, but Paris as well. You can't exactly storyboard a film like this because it reveals itself in front of the lens.
My main goal with this film is just to have people see it, and
Hmm.
it's really
Yep.
nice that there continues to be locations like Boise
Yeah.
where I can bring the film to new audiences. Two of my two of my favorite donors live in Boise, so they're welcoming me,
Oh,
and yeah, yeah.
so yeah, let's get to that. The film opens July 31st at the Flicks in Boise, and you will be at the Flicks on August 1st.
I think one thing that was really important, very important for me when I was making this film is that I felt like my family summarized my brother's life as being tragic, like a tragedy. Like he lived 24 years and he tragically died, and that's the end of the story.
Hmm.
And I'm trying to reframe his story as being, hey, he had 24 great years, and let's look at those years and the things that he did and the things he accomplished and how he connected to friends and family. And that's generally how I would like to suggest that people think about people that die young is like, yes, of course it's tragic, but let's look at the life that happened.
And that documentary opens at the Flicks on July 31st. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Idaho Matters. And for quick news of the day, start your mornings with our podcast. It's called The Connector, Idaho Daily News. And if you haven't yet, could I ask you to leave us a review wherever you listen? We read every single one, and we'd love to hear from you.
Each story you hear on Planet Money starts with a question. What happens if we refund tariffs? Why are groceries so expensive? At NPR, we stand for your right to be curious because the forces shaping our world can be hard to see. Follow NPR's Planet Money wherever you get your podcasts and start seeing how the economy really works.